Dominican Republic. Yes. The General Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency, I beg your pardon, His Excellency Danilo Medina Sánchez, President of the Dominican Republic. I request protocol to escort His Excellency. On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome to the United Nations the President of the Dominican Republic and to invite him to address the Assembly.
Excelentísima.
Your Excellency, Mrs. Maria Fernanda Espinosa Garcés, President of the 73rd Regular Session of the General Assembly of the United Nations. Your Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, allow me to congratulate Ambassador Maria Fernanda Espinosa Garcés on her election as President of this General Assembly and wish her every possible success. For me, it is a great honor to be able to address you again as President of the Dominican Republic. This is a special occasion for our country because next year the Dominican Republic will be part for the first time of the United Nations Security Council as a non-permanent member. That is why I wish to start by thanking, on behalf of the Dominican people and myself, the member countries of the UN for the support received, allowing us to be part of the Security Council. I would particularly like to thank the members of the Group of Countries of Latin America and the Caribbean, GRULAC, for the trust placed in us. Our purpose during this period will be to contribute a Latin American and Caribbean voice to one of the premier instances responsible for maintaining global peace. From now on, we commit to enforcing, both in the Security Council and in this Assembly, the same unbreakable principles that guide us as a nation. Respect for human rights, democracy, freedom, and diversity will therefore be the beacon we will follow to guide our work in the Security Council. We shall do our utmost to honour the trust placed in us, being fully aware that stability and security are priority objectives, but also fragile ones that must be preserved and towards which we advance step by step and day by day. It is clear to us that in a space addressing issues that can alter the history and destiny of millions of people, there is no room for simplistic or drastic but unreal solutions. In this context, our country will always be a body of dialogue, understanding, and search for peaceful solutions. We are always willing to do what it takes to find common ground and support consensus as the best tool for ensuring peace and development. Therefore, at all times, we will encourage reconciliation through mediation and democratic dialogue, thus opening spaces towards a future of shared lasting peace. Ladies and gentlemen, since its establishment just over 7 decades ago, the United Nations has played a central role in maintaining a more stable and secure world for the human population across the globe. However, we must never consider this stability to be a definitive achievement. We cannot let down our guard, aware, for example, that in our Latin American and Caribbean region alone, 35% of the population still belongs to the so-called vulnerable class, which means that any setback can send them right back into poverty. Furthermore, in terms of security, we must recognize that, like so many other things, it is far from being evenly distributed. We all know that there are parts of the Americas and around the world where living peacefully and without fear is little more than a distant dream due to the control exercised by organized crime in those areas. What then can we do to build a more incrementally stable world? What measures must we take so that widespread security is not the privilege of a few nations, but rather extends throughout the world, reaching every region and village? Obviously, I'm not the only one asking these questions. All those present here are pondering the very same issues. Nor shall I give definitive answers, because only by working together can we forge the right responses. What I shall do is briefly identify what I consider to be two of the main threats to global stability and security. I'm referring to climate change and drugs trafficking and organized crime. At first glance, of course, they may seem to be very different phenomena. However, their complexity and global reach make them two of the main challenges facing humanity. In both cases, the consequences are thousands of families destroyed, collateral damage to all aspects of human development, and states overwhelmed by the magnitude of the challenge that they must face. Let us start by talking about the consequences of natural disasters. These natural phenomena are occurring with increasing frequency. We only have to open a newspaper or turn on the television to see the effects of climate change wreaking havoc in one corner or another of the planet. From the typhoon that recently hit the Philippines, with a force not seen in decades, to the cyclonic seasons that punished the Caribbean islands with increasing violence, no corner of the planet is spared. Last year, we saw how Hurricane Irma left Havana totally flooded, and it took several weeks of substantial effort for it to return to a semblance of normality. Puerto Rico, the islands of Antigua and Barbuda, as well as others in the Caribbean, took several months to recover from the effects of Hurricane Maria, which not only brought economic losses, but also claimed a high number of human lives. The Dominican Republic is strongly committed to preventing the consequences of climate change. Therefore, we are focusing simultaneously on action at three levels: the local, national, and international. Because the local level is where people go about their daily lives. It is here where tragedies epitomize a painful reality. It is therefore here where the work of building, preparing, and raising awareness must begin. Both locally and nationally, which is where our government has more capacity to act, we are improving resilience and relocating the communities that live around our most important bodies of water that are highly vulnerable to weather phenomena. We are also doing a great deal to raise awareness, such as by training thousands of teachers and technicians who will promote sustainable development in their schools and communities. At the national level, we are also working tirelessly, both in our rapid reaction strategies and in prevention. Thus, for instance, we are planting millions of trees across our country, while at the same time investing in renewable energy as never before. These measures not only support our economy, but will also help us reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 25% by 2030. This is a goal that fills us with great satisfaction. Nonetheless, the fight against climate change is the work of all of us, and that is why this international level, the last international level, is vital. This is a space in which, if there is no political will, most of our efforts will come to nothing and will negatively impact all of the gains achieved at the local and national levels. That is why I reiterate before this Assembly the utmost importance of going beyond good intentions and focusing on concrete actions. And among those actions, I once again would like to highlight the urgency of financing and operationalizing initiatives such as the Warsaw International Mechanism for Loss and Damage that will make it possible to compensate for the destruction of infrastructure, ecosystems, and ease the vulnerability of our residents. This fund is essential so that natural disasters do not destroy, in a few hours, what many nations have spent decades building. I shall give you just one example, bearing in mind that our example is not the most dramatic in the Caribbean region. Last year, the passage of storms Olga and Maria meant for our country the destruction of infrastructure worth more than $1 billion. Imagine what this means for a country in which the annual budget of the state is already limited. But above all, this fund will help protect the valuable lives of millions of human beings. It will bring peace of mind to them in their homes and allow them to have a future without the permanent uncertainty of feeling threatened every time they see the rain coming. In light of all of this, we believe it is inevitable that those countries that have contributed most to the emission of gases responsible for climate change are those that proportionally contribute to this fund established to mitigate its effects. Moreover, as I described earlier, we believe that drugs trafficking and organised crime are a threat to global security and stability, which are of a magnitude similar to that of climate change. The trafficking of illicit substances claims thousands of lives every year, particularly young lives that are extremely valuable for our countries. But if this were not enough, it permeates our institutions, it unbalances our economies, it threatens our values, and it brings nothing but degradation and destruction to our social fabric. Wherever we see organised crime, security and the peace of our people are eroded over time. Therefore here, as with climate change, the fight against drugs must be waged at all three aforementioned levels, local, national and international, in order to achieve effective results. In the case of our country, local intervention is focused on prevention campaigns and on the education of our young people, supporting them with training and entrepreneurial opportunities, while improving neighbourhoods in which they live and recovering public spaces for people to use. We do all of this with the goal of keeping the most vulnerable population from the reach of criminal networks. At the national level, the security forces and our National Drug Control Department are working hard across the country as a part of a comprehensive plan to strengthen activities against drug trafficking. Among other initiatives, we are acquiring new high-tech equipment and stepping up security at our ports and airports, with more officers and security checks, as well as carrying out in-depth interventions in areas with the highest crime rates. In parallel, we have progressed with the approval of a law against money laundering and financing for terrorism, based on the recommendations of the Financial Action Task Force, GAFILAT. with emphasis on the prevention of and countering of money laundering, which is used by drugs traffickers to make a profit from their activities. Finally, at the international level, we have bilateral and multilateral agreements with the United States, the European Union, and the Central American Integration System, SICA. In addition, we participate in the Caribbean Basin Security Initiative, all with the aim of coordinating efforts and improving our efficiency in the fight against drugs trafficking and organized crime. Thanks to initiatives like these, we are better prepared to fight together against this evil that threatens the integrity of our economies and our democracies. However, we must insist on the need to deepen this international coordination. We can make great progress if we join forces, if we share information and support each other in this work. Here again, we understand that it is the countries that, with their domestic demand for narcotics and that have set in motion the international machinery of drugs trafficking and organized crime, which must shoulder the greatest responsibility. We cannot ignore the fact that it is developing nations that act as the first barrier to containing drugs trafficking, and thus protecting the most developed countries. In so doing, our countries expend billions of dollars every year, which, however, are never enough in the face of the resources deployed by organized crime. This is undoubtedly a key factor in the social disintegration that we see in many of our countries. As in the case of climate change, it is the more developed countries with greater consumption capacity that must deploy more resources, cooperation, and political will if we are truly to fight this phenomenon with any hope of victory. In combating the effects of drugs trafficking and climate change, we will be solving some of these structural causes that lead countries to see deeper poverty and social inequality. If the United Nations and developed countries want to help fight poverty more comprehensively, and frankly, these two fronts are a smart, humane, and cost-effective way to do so. To them, to their responsibility and solidarity, we appeal once again from this rostrum to make our planet a safer place. Ladies and gentlemen, climate change, drugs trafficking, poverty, social inequality, and mass migration are all interrelated problems that we must deal with urgently. As we have pointed out today, the best and perhaps the only way to do so is to act at all levels of response to the problem. To ensure that the agreements signed in a forum such as the UN have a real impact on the lives of people, so that the real needs of our people find expression in their national and even international institutions. Therefore, we must all continue to act according to our capacities, but without hesitation and with the same aim, to create a world that is increasingly stable, secure, and developed. A world where all men and women can achieve their dreams. This is the ultimate goal for which the Dominican Republic will continue to work. We do so in our towns, in our neighborhoods, and in all of our cities. With our immediate neighbors, with all of you, distinguished members of this General Assembly, and next year, also as part of the Security Council of the UN, in this new role that we will be honored to assume. Thank you very much.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Dominican Republic for the statement just made. May I request the representatives to remain seated while we greet the Head of State.